Good evening. So, tomorrow is Christmas, as you may have figured out. Tomorrow is also the first night of Hanukkah. So I have a story this evening that has some elements from both. And it goes like this. Oscar's mother and father believed in blessings. And so did Oscar, until the night of the broken glass. After that night, Oscar was sent on a boat to America where he would be safer. He was sent with two things. He was sent with a picture of his aunt, Esther, who he had never ever met, and her address. And he was sent with a reminder from his parents. His parents told him, Oscar, even in bad times, people can be good. You have to look for the blessings. So Oscar arrived in New York City on Christmas Eve. It was also the seventh night of Hanukkah, seventh day of Hanukkah. He arrived during the day. And he had to get to Aunt Esther's house before sundown so that he could be there when they lit the candles. Now, Aunt Esther lived in the 100 blocks of Broadway. And Oscar was way down in Lower Manhattan. He had to walk 100 blocks up a big, wide road named Broadway that stretched out in front of him like a river. He was so small, and the city was so big, and he wasn't sure if he would make it. He started walking, and he came upon a woman who was feeding pigeons. She had a little crust of bread, and she was breaking off pieces to feed the birds. And Oscar saw her, and she caught his eye, and she gave him a piece of the bread to feed to the birds. And Oscar really wanted to feed the birds, but also he was really hungry. He hadn't had a meal that day, and he knew he had to walk a long way. And so, even though he felt bad about it, he ate the little piece of stale bread. The woman saw him, and she reached into her bag, and she pulled out a fresh roll studded with raisins, still a little bit warm, and she gave it to Oscar. And he thought about those words that his parents had told him, that even in bad times, people can be good. You have to look for the blessings. He kept walking, and he saw a newsstand where there were comic books, kind of like right at eye level for a young boy. And he saw in one of the comic books there was this man with big muscles and a cape, and he could do all these amazing things. He could stop a train with his hand. He could carry people while they were flying. He could do these like super things, like he was some kind of Superman. Oscar was amazed by this character. Now, the man who was running the newsstand, he held out his hand for payment for the comic book. Oscar didn't have any money, so he put the book back. But the man said, you know what, kid? Keep it. It's Christmas. Merry Christmas. And he gave Oscar the comic book. And Oscar thought, even in bad times, people can be good. You have to look for the blessings. He kept walking along, and he heard a sound. He heard someone whistling. He looked down on a hallway or an alley, and he saw a man there whistling a little tune. Oscar caught his eye, and the man started whistling at Oscar, and Oscar whistled back. And they whistled back and forth, their sounds bouncing off the buildings like the snow falling in the sky. It was his first conversation in America. And Oscar thought, even in bad times, people can be good. You have to look for the blessings. Oscar kept going, and he passed a park, and there were boys playing with a ball, and they were throwing it back and forth, and they were having so much fun. One of the boys tripped and fell, and Oscar grabbed him before he hit the sidewalk. Oscar felt like that Superman in the comic books. He was able to help someone and save the day. The boy was so grateful, he shook Oscar's hand and noticed that Oscar's hand was red and raw from the cold. The boy took off his own mittens and gave them to Oscar. Oscar didn't have anything to give in return except for the Superman comic, and so he gave it in exchange for those warm mittens. The warmth of them reminded him of his parents, and he thought, even in bad times, people can be good. You have to look for the blessings. It was getting dark. Oscar was sure he was going to miss sundown. He was going to miss the lighting of the candles. He started to run, and he slipped and fell, and someone came and helped him back up, patted him, made sure he was okay. You have to look for the blessings. Finally, Oscar was in a neighborhood that seemed so familiar. The smells smelled like home. He heard a woman singing a prayer, and then he heard, "Benjamin?" And Oscar turned and said, "That's my father's name. I am." And the woman, Esther, said, "Oscar, we've been waiting for you." Thank you for listening to my story this evening. Merry Christmas.